I'll be reading a fan fiction by Begonia Rex based off of the WEBTOON comic Midnight Poppyland. I've read one of Begonia Rex's stories before. Her work is lovely. She's really lovely. I will, however, post below the link to reading more of Begonia Rex's work, as well as the link to Midnight Poppyland on WEBTOONs. I suggest reading both. Let's get into it. I hope you enjoy. Quincy, what the hell is this? Tora growled from inside the changing room. Your fierce and badass warrior costume, Quincy said brightly. Where's the rest of it? That is the full outfit, Quincy said. He didn't even need to see Tora to know the man was scowling. Yeah, fuck no am I walking around in this anywhere, Tora said after a long pause. No, Tora said flatly, his tone brooking no further argument on the matter. Don't bother trying to pull your bullshit on me, princess. Even I know this isn't even close to historically accurate. You're no fun, honey, Quincy sighed loudly. When there was no further response from the changing room besides a continued, irritated silence, he threw up his hands and huffed. Fine, I'll see if they have a more historically accurate costume available in your size. But at least let Poppy see it before you make up your mind. I think my indomitable little editor would be happy to offer feedback on the appropriateness of your outfit for the upcoming excursion, seeing as how she's the most experienced person in our party, Quincy said, biting back a sly grin as he threw a wink over at the woman in question. Quinston, Tora started to say, a dangerously annoyed edge to his voice. Quincy wanted to cackle at the slight hint of embarrassment he immediately picked up on in the normally insouciant man's voice. Oh, come on, Tora, let me see it. It can't be that bad, Poppy called out from the cushy sitting area a few feet away, interrupting whatever threat he'd been about to make. I doubt it's any worse than the person I saw once who looked like they crawled inside an inner tube and let it explode around them. Besides, even if it's terrible, we're the only ones here anyways. Here was Foxtails, a high-end, by-appointment-only costume rental shop that Quincy had utilized multiple times over the years for positively smashing Halloween and masquerade party outfits. Today, they were there to pick out costumes for an entirely new experience, for the two men anyways, and Quincy was utterly delighted to have two more people to dress up, insisting their group needed to coordinate for maximum effect. And honestly, who better to coordinate all their outfits than the one with the keenest eye for fashion? Since Tora was the hardest to fit due to his large size, he was going first, and then Quincy would make sure his and Poppy's outfits complemented whatever worked out for the tall, broad-shouldered, grumpy man. It was a thankless task trying to get the big lout to do anything fun, but someone had to do it. The things he did for that ungrateful man. It was like trying to convince a toddler he needed to put on pants. If the toddler outweighed him by a good 40 pounds of solid muscle and could crush his face with one hand if he so felt the urge. Thankfully, Poppy's sweet, doe-eyed presence had a wonderfully pacifying effect on the dark, moody man's usually short wig, with his well-meaning younger brother's completely gentle and not in any way annoying prodding. His adorable little editor just had to bat those large, expressive eyes of hers at Tora, smile sweetly, and the man would just cave to whatever she asked of him. Quincy honestly thought his eyes had stopped working the first time he saw it happen. This tiny slip of a woman had tamed the great tiger of Airy Street with nothing more than a bashful smile and a cute face that blushed at the drop of a hat. Okay, and those absolutely gorgeous curves of hers probably helped a bit too. As the resident expert on blossoming romance, Quincy had made sure they were the only clients being served for the length of their appointment that afternoon. He wanted to minimize any distractions from his continued attempt at getting the two hesitant but clearly smitten dorks in front of him to progress their relationship beyond flirty bantering and occasional hand-holding. Without his active intervention, he worried Tora in particular would never actually do anything about their glaringly obvious mutual attraction, besides not so furtively eye-fucking the cute little brunette and trying to get a rise out of her with his constant innuendo and teasing. They just needed more uninterrupted time together. The spark and chemistry was definitely already there. That was obvious to literally anyone but Tora and Poppy, apparently. Quincy was happy to provide a little nudge to get things moving along in the right direction. Okay, so maybe in Tora's case, a very hard kick in the ass was required, but Quincy was more than willing to rise to the challenge. He'd never seen the taciturn, tight-lipped man so utterly and completely smitten. Tora was absolutely ass over tea kettle for Poppy. It was adorable to see his normally calm, cool, and collected bodyguard so flustered and thrown off his game by this 5'0" feisty brunette that already had him eating out of her hand. Quincy had caught Tora more than once in the last month actually smiling like a genuine, completely natural expression and not the creepy one he pulled out to scare people into submission. Any woman who managed to bring the normally reticent, incredibly guarded man out of his shell like that was a priceless treasure that Quincy was determined not to just let slip away from his idiotic older brother. He'd set up that whole evening at Fallen Angels just for them to connect more, and yet they still didn't seem to have made any further moves since then. Gah, he knew life in the Mafia made any kind of romantic relationship a little complicated. Okay, so a lot more complicated. But honestly, it seemed like Tora was determined to just watch that sweet little thing go on her merry way without so much as saying a single word about his interest in her. It had been just over 2 weeks since their joint party, and Quincy didn't think the pair had hung out one-on-one even once during that time. He knew Tora and Poppy both tended to get caught up with their respective jobs. His brother obviously didn't have much of a choice in that matter, and she seemed determined to drive herself into the ground working overtime. So he was bound and determined to find a way to get them together, off the clock for an extended amount of time, preferably far removed from any work or clan distractions. Thankfully, a recent offhand comment from his intrepid editor had been just the opening he'd been waiting for. Poppy mentioned taking a couple days off to attend an upcoming Renaissance festival several hours away from Narran City. Quincy instantly saw it as the perfect opportunity to play Cupid for the two Twitter-pated lovebirds who were apparently in deep denial about their feelings for each other. He immediately pounced at the chance to get them all out of town for a few days, telling Tora he wanted to tag along with his cute little editor to do some research for an upcoming story, which meant that his trusty bodyguard would have to come along as well for the extended weekend trip. They'd been going in the best costumes Quincy could procure to get the full experience, of course, and it just wouldn't do to have one of their party in the street clothes. He'd pointed out how it would spoil the vibe of their whole outing if his grouchy older brother went to the festival in his usual boring ensemble of a hoodie and jeans. When Tora had protested, as Quincy well knew he would, at the prospect of wearing some floofy-ass puffy shirt, Poppy'd only had to look pleadingly at him with those big brown eyes of hers, and the normally immovable man had quickly caved in short order. She'd pointed out, matter-of-factly, that there were plenty of other options besides the type of get-ups found on the covers of Kyubi Noyoku's books. Tora had finally huffed and muttered that he'd go in costume, but he wasn't wearing any fucking Prince Charming prancy bullshit. His non-negotiable conditions were that since he was being forced to wear something besides his normal choice of clothes, he would be outfitted as some kind of warrior with absolutely no tights or puffed sleeves, and that it was solely Quincy's responsibility to find him something suitably badass. We'll leave it there for now. This is definitely a fun story, and I will try to come back to it another day. I hope you enjoyed. Please check out the links below, and you can read this story yourself and check out Midnight Poppyland as well. Thanks again. Enjoy your rest.